Most people think that courage is loud, dramatic, Instagrammable, but real courage, it's quiet, uncomfortable, and deeply inconvenient for the parts of you that prefer to stay small, discreet, and hidden. Cowardice doesn't sound like, I'm scared. Cowardice sounds like, I'll start when I'm ready. I don't want to post until it's perfect. No one will watch it anyway. What's the point? Cowardice wears reasonable clothing. It sounds like intelligence, caution, being realistic. But in the solar plexus, where your will, identity, and self-trust live, cowardice is the silent killer of destiny. Courage is the first step out of hell. And if you've ever been to hell, you'll know that you don't get out with inspiration. You get out with conviction. Today, we're going to talk about the psychology of courage, how cowardice disguises itself, and how to build personal power without becoming the self-appointed sage or the self-help guru. Let's get into it. Cowardice is not fear. Fear is primal, an alert warning you against impending danger and threats. Cowardice is a refusal to act in alignment with what you already know is true. You can recognize cowardice through avoidance disguised as self-care, the kind where you avoid the real work but light a candle and call it shadow work. Chronic hesitation, endlessly researching, planning and preparing, but never doing. Dependency on external permission, waiting for approval, validation, a tribe, anything other than your own internal authority. Perfectionism, the polished face of fear, a beautifully decorated cage. Emotional collapse when faced with conflict, not because you're weak, but because you were never taught how to hold your ground without aggression. Cowardice isn't a moral flaw, it's an energetic contraction, a conditioned response resulting in self-censorship. A system stuck in survival mode, fear, desire, anger, pride, the lower map of consciousness. Courage sits above all of them. It's the moment you say, I'm terrified and I'm going to do it anyway. That's when life stops being a reaction and becomes a creation. If we were working one-on-one, I'd ask you, what is the single action you've been avoiding that you know would change your life? Not the fantasy, the actual action. What story do you tell yourself to justify postponing it? People have incredibly poetic excuses. Cowardice loves poetic language. Who benefits when you stay small? Someone always does, even if it's just the old version of yourself who fears change. What identity are you protecting by not acting? The small one? The unprepared one? The not good enough yet one? Cowardice is always attached to identity. Courage is the moment you interrupt that identity and say, this isn't who I am anymore. And finally, what would be lost if you acted with full conviction? Social approval, predictability, comfort, your old world view. Courage is not about being fearless. It's about being willing to outgrow your former self. That's why it feels like death, because it is the death of the version of you who never believed they could. Imagine standing at the base of a steep, narrow mountain path. The path is rocky, uneven, unpredictable, and it's the only way out. Behind you, the valley of stagnation, comfortable, familiar, suffocating. Ahead of you is elevation, perspective, and light. No one can climb it for you. No one can lift your foot. But here's the truth. The path doesn't require perfection. It requires momentum. The first step is the hardest. The second is uncomfortable. The third feels impossible. But somewhere around the 10th step, something shifts. Your breath settles. Your body remembers its strength. Your mind stops negotiating for the easy way out. And the path that looks impossible becomes proof of who you're becoming. Courage is a mountain pass. You don't rise because it's easy. You rise because the valley is no longer an option. And perhaps as you hear these words, a small part of you is already leaning forward, curious to know who you might become when cowardice is no longer negotiating your destiny. You don't need to leap. You don't need to roar. You don't need to feel ready. Courage begins with a breath, with a micro movement, with a choice so small it appears invisible. And yet these small choices, repeated with conviction, reshape identity at the root. And maybe as you imagine that mountain pass now, you notice a version of you already taking a step. Not because you're fearless, but because you're becoming a person who acts even with fear in the room. That's bravery. That's conviction. That's courage. So take a breath and let it deepen you. A breath into your center, your power, your truth. And perhaps you can feel, even subtly, the warmth of courage flickering inside. Not dramatic, not loud, just steady, honest, alive. You are allowed to become brave. You are allowed to outgrow cowardice. You are allowed to act without apology. And as you move into the rest of your day, you might carry this quiet conviction with you, a reminder that courage isn't a moment. It's a practice, a rhythm, a choice. You are strong and courageous. You honor yourself.